Anybody want to come stand in the way? You can be my little Snake River Canyon today.
I was running alone and I was fatigued, and of course, one of my biggest fears had just come true. Running into a mama bear and her cub.
It was quiet, it was beautiful, the creek was rushing and wild and scenic.
That day we both hiked 13 miles, set up camp, and then I ran a marathon in order to go back and get our batteries. Blessings everyone, it's Ross, and we're back with episode 3 of the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge 2019 wrap-up / 2020 kickoff virtual video Pseudo-Cyber party. And this takes the place of our annual party at Seven Hills Running Shop, which isn't happening this year because of the stay home, stay healthy initiative or directive in Washington State and much of the rest of the country by different names and to varying degrees. But because of the coronavirus pandemic, of course, we can't gather and do the thing we would normally do, so we're doing it through this series of videos and doing all the stuff we would normally do at the party, showing off the prizes, giving the results for 2019, which was done in episode 2 by Brad Heftegaub, and special awards, which will be continuing, and announcing all of the new routes and challenges for the new year. So this is the 3rd episode, and we're on to the 3rd challenge, and Kathy is going to be getting to that in a little bit. So I hope everybody is participating in the party to whatever degree they want to. I've got my cheap, low-quality instant coffee, which is my party beverage of choice when I'm hosting videos. Good golly, it's almost gone. Now that's a party. So first off, to address some of the nerdy stuff, which is some of my favorite aspects of the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge, is I want to talk about some of the rules and guidelines, or one particular rule and guideline, because I saw it being discussed in the Facebook group. And if you live in Washington or near Washington and you're going to be visiting Washington and you want to participate in the UPWC, then I really recommend you joining the Facebook group, because there's a lot of cool people in there that you can connect with, get information about the different routes and challenges, and even meet up with people to do the routes together or to arrange vehicle shuttles, drop off, pick up, things like that. So I do recommend joining the Facebook group. It's not compulsory. You don't have to do it. If you don't do it, you're probably signing up for a special level of badassery to do things all on your own without any help or cooperation from the rest of the community. But if so, hey, good for you, go for it. So a question that comes up frequently, definitely every year, multiple times, and came up recently, ties into the question of style or ethic. And when I talk about ethic, I'm not talking about ethics meaning morality, but I'm talking about ethic as far as guidelines for how you comport yourself. So in adventuring, less so in the adventure running scene and the fastest known time scene, which to a great degree comes from organized running and, organized races and things like that. More so from mountaineering and alpinism. I mean, that's really where the majority of these guidelines come from, or these sensibilities, perhaps, let's call them. But I want to discuss them and what's germane to the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge. And as I said, I gave a nerd warning because this is some nerdy stuff. And you might want to, if you're not interested in this, you can skip ahead to Kathy's section, which is probably around the 12-minute mark, I'm going to guess. And you can just skip to that. But this question could come up because it comes up frequently. Before I get to it, I'm just going to quickly talk about the different aspects of good style or your ethic in adventuring. And there's basically 3 different ethics that people follow. There's supported, self-supported, or unsupported. And unsupported is really the goal with the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge. But to give a quick overview, supported is essentially like, basically comes from a race ethic. So if you're doing a supported effort, you would have a crew who would be meeting you with supplies. You might have pacers that are running along with you. You've got other people that are helping you in what you're doing and are, the vast majority of the time making use of mechanized transportation as well in order to do that, to jump ahead on your route and give you supplies and trade off pacers to keep you moving and all that. So that is in no way allowed in the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge. If you want to do that, you can either organize your own fastest known time attempt on the route of your choice, or you can join an organized race. That's really where that is appropriate. Self-supported is more along the lines of a thru-hiking ethic, where you would ship supplies ahead to yourself or place caches ahead of time yourself, and then you would pick them up along the way on your adventure. Again, that is not something that we do in the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge. That's not what it's for. There's one very small caveat to that, which has to do with buying supplies along the way at stores. And in general, that's not allowed in the Wilderness Challenge, except currently on 2 routes, both of which were designed by Heather and Ish Anderson. So that's an interesting tie-in. I don't know if I'd ever quite realized that before, since she is a world famous thru-hiker. It's interesting that both of her routes include the chance to access a store. So on both of those routes, we are allowing accessing the store and buying things at the store along the way. And that's on the Olympic Coast route and the Purple Rainbow route. So those are the 2 exceptions currently, and on a route by route basis, we may very well allow that in the future. But right now it's just those 2. So that bleeds over into the self-supported ethic. But again, that's not what we're going for. The vast majority of the routes, that would be a violation of the rules. So the real goal is unsupported. So that means that you begin with all the gear you're going to need. You carry all your trash and everything until the end. The only thing you pick up along the way is water, and in the strictest sense, that would be from natural sources. And this is really the alpine ethic in mountaineering, and it's the concept of good style. So again, the Wilderness Challenge is supposed to be different from an organized race format. It's supposed to be a different paradigm, a different way of looking at the world. And you look at a route differently when you have to consider how long it's going to take you, and therefore what sort of supplies you need to take with you. If you're running through the night, you need headlamps, multiple charged headlamps, or you need backup batteries. If you're taking multiple days, then maybe you want to bring a shelter and or sleep system. The longer you take, the more food you're likely to need. There's a lot of factors that play into it, and evaluating that and planning for that is part of the challenge. The challenge in the UPWC doesn't begin when you touch the trail. It begins before that, when you're learning your route and planning out everything. So that's part of the challenge.
Okay, there's a mama bear and her cub right up ahead. Oh, nope. Oh. And that is the point where I thought I was going to die. Hi, I'm Sean Michael, and this is my bear story. So as Brad had mentioned on last week's episode, on my way to an almost FKT on the Owehai Lakes Loop, I ran into a mama bear and her cub at mile 25. I was running alone and I was fatigued, and of course, one of my biggest fears had just come true. Running into a mama bear and her cub on the trail. So I tried to stay cool in a panicky kind of way, eventually remembering what you're supposed to do. Make noise, look big, all of that. But that didn't seem to matter because they didn't seem to care that I was there. They just remained 10 feet off the trail, 5 feet off the trail, foraging for whatever. And so I just pulled out my phone and I was like, all right, I guess I'll film this. So I filmed a shaky amateur video that I could eventually share with you guys and tell the story about how I overcame one of my biggest fears out there on the trails of running alone. And that is why I deserve bonus points. Bye-bye, bear.
Now, a question that has arisen over the years has to do with being accompanied on a route. So the Wilderness Challenge rules clearly state that you can participate in teams and that either the members of a team can all be unsupported individuals traveling together but not sharing any resources, or an entire team can share resources but the team itself has to be unsupported. There can't be anybody who is not a member of the team providing any additional support. But within your team, if one person is going to carry the tent and the other person is going to carry the sleeping bag, for instance, then that's allowable. So the team itself is unsupported at that point. Now, a lot of the Wilderness Challenge guidelines essentially follow the fastest known time best practices as established by Peter Bachwin and everybody at fastestknowntime.com. And one of their long-standing interpretations of these guidelines is that accompanied is supported. So again, we're going for an unsupported ethic. We want to be completing our UPWC routes in good style. So that would be unsupported. So this is where this question keeps up, where somebody either doesn't understand the rules ahead of time, and so they're doing a route and they have some friends going with them who aren't signed up and aren't interested in participating in the Wilderness Challenge, or somebody who's maybe just wants to do part of it, so they run or hike with the person who's doing the challenge and then they break off. And that is technically a violation of the rules. But when we get into rules, we have to kind of look at the purpose of that. The whole purpose of rules, when you're not talking about a legal aspect or something like that, but the purpose of rules is that it defines the game. It defines the sport being played. So if you're only allowed, if you're in combat sports and you're not allowed to do any striking, you're only allowed, takedowns and pins, then obviously that's wrestling. If you're allowed hip throws and arm bars, things like that, then perhaps what you're participating in is judo. If strikes are allowed as well, then maybe it's sambo. If kicks and strikes and submissions and everything is involved, then it's probably mixed martial arts. If there's beer bottles and knives and handguns, then it's probably a street brawl, which isn't generally considered a sport. But you can see how the rules define the game that's being played. So that's why we have rules in UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge, is to define the game so that we're all essentially playing the same game, because the goal is to be able to share and compare our experiences. So with the unsupported / unaccompanied rule ethic guideline, that plays in especially to speed attempts. So if you're going after the fastest time on a route, then that is going to be an issue, because having somebody accompany you has an effect, even if you don't think it does. Just knowing that there's somebody there can make you move faster, can keep you going longer, even if you don't realize it. And then, of course, if somebody is right there with you and talking to you and watching your pacing and helping you keep going faster, that's pretty obvious that they're helping at that point. So if there's somebody traveling with you who's not a registered participant and isn't participating, then technically that is violating the rules. But we have to look at intent. Some people come into the Wilderness Challenge and it's one of the first times that they've ever done a backcountry route, or they've ever done this sort of mileage outside of a race paradigm, and they're concerned, they're uncomfortable, they don't feel that it's safe to do it solo, they maybe don't know other people who are UPWC players and are shy about taking on an adventure with somebody that they don't know really well. There's a lot of factors that play into it. And the point of the rules is not to disqualify people who make honest attempts at these routes. The point of the rules is not to keep anybody from participating. It's simply to level the playing field, like I said, so that we're all playing the same game and we can realistically compare our experiences and performances. So that being said, if you are accompanied by somebody who is not registered and not participating in the Wilderness Challenge, it's going to disqualify you for prizes and awards, but it's not going to necessarily disqualify your finish. You can still earn a finisher's patch and get an official finish, but you're not going to be able to win any prizes based on speed, especially. Like 100%, that's out the door. Anytime you violate the rules, then winning awards and prizes is generally going to be out the door. Our goal is not to disqualify anybody if we can avoid it. So the only thing so far that I know of that has kept anybody from getting an official finish has to do with not completing the entire route, going off route to bag additional peaks along the way and not getting back on at the same point, or not backtracking and touching every part of the route. But that's the only thing that really ends up having that effect so far. If somebody, was accompanied by somebody who wasn't a registered participant, and in whatever way we were able to figure out that it was done with the intent of cheating, with the intent of somehow defrauding the event and gaining an upper hand over other players, then that would be grounds for complete disqualification. But again, we, as far as I know, have never had anybody actually perpetrate anything with a malicious intent like that, and I would be surprised if anybody did. That is the sort of official ruling on having somebody who's not registered accompany you, is that unless some other factors come to light, it is not going to disqualify you from your finish, but it will disqualify you from special awards and prizes for that particular route. And now to tell you about the third challenge that we've announced so far for the 2020 season of the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge is UPWC co-founder Kathy Vaughn.
What's up, UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge community? This is Kathy, and I am excited about announcing the third of the challenges in the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge 2020 season. The loop that I have come up with for the challenge is called the What a Surprise Creek Loop, the Was Up Loop. It's a loop that's just shy of 24 miles in length and has about 5,700 feet in elevation. So it's a pretty solid loop. The way that I came up with this route is during the summer of 2018, Ross and I hiked and put together a route called the Up North Loop. It was a loop that really traveled through much of the inland Northwest, where we started down south in Hammett, Idaho, hiked all the way west through the Oregon Desert, hit the Pacific Crest Trail in Bend, Oregon, headed north on that until we hit the North Cascades Highway, headed east on the Pacific Northwest Trail all the way to Idaho, where we hopped on the Idaho Centennial Trail and took it south to where we started in Hammett. On that long route, in the state of Washington on the Pacific Crest Trail, we wanted to meet up with Ross's mom. She had a bunch of food for us to both take hiking and just to stop and picnic with her. We had some layer changes, and we really had set up this time to meet up with her. We were running a little bit behind schedule, which is pretty common for us. And so in looking at the map, when we were up on the PCT, we discovered that we could take the Surprise Creek Trail and meet up with her in a much easier way. And it would be easier than her driving all the way up to the summit of Stevens Pass. And we just saw that it would just be about 4 miles. We could head down this steep descent and meet up with her at the Surprise Lake trailhead. So we did that, and on that trail we found that once we got off the PCT, we were just all alone. It was quiet, it was beautiful. The creek was rushing and wild and scenic and had all this beautiful foliage growing all around it. It was rocky with these huge boulders and just a lovely color of water running and rushing through the creek. It was just awesome. We followed that all the way down, met up with her quite easily at the Surprise Lake trailhead, and that is actually in the Mount Baker Snoqualmie Ranger District. That is the trail number 1060. So if you're interested in this route, when you're looking that up, it's easy to find the PCT, and the other information that you'll need is that Surprise Lake trailhead. That is where we met up easily with his mom. Again, looking at route changes, we thought, how can we get back up to Stevens Pass rather than just going back up that steep trail? Is there something else we can do? And sure enough, we looked into a couple different options. One was the Iron Gate trailhead, and the other was the old, historic, and abandoned Cascade Highway. We decided to take the easier of the routes, the Cascade Highway, since we were in the middle of this huge, long loop. But on this loop for the Wilderness Challenge, you could decide whether to take the Iron Goat trailhead and be on single track, or take this old historic highway. It would be really fast, runnable, super fast hiking, and you'd pass through a couple old historic town sites that were taken out by avalanche. You would be following along the Ty River. It was so pretty, and again, just really easy going. There's just a little bit of car traffic, but not much. A lot of bicyclists, because you get to a point where the reason why the highway was abandoned is because a bridge was washed out. So when you get to that point, there can be no more car traffic from either side of it. But when you're following that, you could decide whether to take the Iron Goat trailhead or this historic highway. You pass through 2 historic town sites and then keep going and just heading north on a really simple route all the way until you get back up to Stevens Pass. So that's kind of the gist of it. A really easily accessible route that can be started from several different places around the loop itself. You can feel like you're just seeing some really beautiful country. You can be following part of the well-known PCT, but not spend the whole day on it. You can be on this abandoned highway where you're making great time and getting to see the Ty River and just feeling like you're really following a really historic route. And you can wind up back up at Stevens Pass, just an easy parking lot to get to, and seemingly also a very safe place to leave your car for the day for a really fun ultra-pedestrian wilderness challenge. So I hope that this is one that many of you will consider. The Was Up Creek Loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I want to thank everybody who has submitted bonus points moments videos for us to include in the series of videos here. I think that's super cool. That's normally something that gets shared and discussed at the party, so having everybody send in their videos is really making this more like the party that we have every year at Seven Hills Running Shop. So I really appreciate that. And to honor that and to reward that and to encourage more people for the next 2 videos to submit their bonus points moments, we are conducting the inaugural bonus points Bonanza. So everybody who contributes a bonus points moment video, including everybody who already has up to this point, all of your names are going to be put into a drawing for 2 $50 gift certificates to Seattle's Seven Hills Running Shop. So those will go to 2 different people, and everybody that's in a video that's a registered participant in the UPWC, their name will be put into this drawing. And after the 5th video, so after 2 more videos, we'll draw 2 names from that, and each of those people will get a $50 gift certificate to 7 Hills Running Shop. So get your bonus points videos made and send them in. They don't have to be killer. You don't have to edit them. You can just send me, a minute, 2 minutes of raw video, and I'll trim it down to the interesting parts. If you want to put a little more effort in, then go ahead and edit it into exactly what you want shown. Please don't include any music. It'll cause trouble on YouTube, and it'll blank out the audio for that entire section. So there won't be any audio for whatever section has the copyright infringing song. So please don't include music. But other than that, make your videos, just put it together. You can just self-shoot it in landscape on your phone. It doesn't have to be high quality. This is just sharing some moments from the Wilderness Challenge, like those bonus points moments where it gets extra, whether it's a great experience or a less than great experience. All of that is part of what's so unique about the Wilderness Challenge and part of what we all love to hear from everybody's adventures. And in that spirit, I want to share one of my kind of bonus points moments from the Up North Loop that Kathy and I did in 2018. So this is another of my personal fails, which I love to share because I actually think these are a lot more interesting than the stories of when everything goes right. So early on in the trip, the very first leg of the loop was about 200 miles. We had no resupply. We had one little resupply where some folks that we didn't actually know were going to be leaving a package out for us just out in the middle of the Owyhee Canyonlands. So we didn't 100% know if it was going to be there or if animals might have gotten into it before we could get there. So there was no guaranteed resupply, and even if that was going to be there, it was a small box. It wasn't another 100 miles worth of food. It was just a small supplemental cache. So we were in this big long stretch, and a good portion of this was a connection from the Idaho Centennial Trail to the Oregon Desert Trail. So it was across southwestern Idaho and southeastern Oregon. I mean, really far-flung realms that are not highly traveled. We went days and days and days without seeing human beings in that section. Without even seeing like the distant taillights of a truck at night or anything like that. Almost no sign of human beings for that. And so one day we got up and we're navigating almost entirely by GPS at this point because we have a GPS track, even though it hadn't been ground tested. It hadn't actually been foot tested, so we didn't even know if the route would go. But that was our really only means of navigating in that section. And so we get up, break camp, Kathy and I hike, into the afternoon, and we get 13 miles in and we're stopped for a little break. And I go to get out some sesame sticks that I had in my hip belt pocket. And when I go to get them out, I realize that my battery supply is not in there. So I had this big cache of AA batteries all duct taped together for the GPS, which was just absolutely necessary. That was how we were navigating, and they weren't there. So I realized at some point when I was getting my sesame snacks out to eat, I had either not zipped it or the batteries had fallen out and I didn't realize it. And we didn't have any idea where we could access a town. We hadn't been seeing people, so it's not like we could try to bum batteries off of anyone. We knew that we were going into the Owyhee Canyonlands after this, and there wasn't going to be any place to get batteries. There wasn't batteries in this little resupply cache that we were hoping to get. So I just realized that I had no choice but to go back and try to find this set of batteries. So we got the tent set up, and I set Kathy up, and she just hung out at the tent while I took a really minimal rig. I borrowed something she had that I could use as a hip belt or as a day pack. I don't even remember at this point, but I borrowed a very, very small pack and took a headlamp and headed out, not knowing how far I was going to have to travel to find these batteries, but figuring that there's a good chance it was going to be a long ways. And it turned out it was. It turned out that I had dropped these batteries in our campsite from the previous night. So basically, right as we were walking out of camp that morning, I dropped the batteries and had no idea and didn't realize it the entire day. So I ended up running the 13 miles back to our camp, finding the batteries, and running all the way back to where Kathy was in our camp for the next night. So that day we both hiked 13 miles, set up camp, and then I ran a marathon in order to go back and get our battery supply, which was essentially for the next almost 2 weeks. So that's a pretty major fail. I mean, losing the entire battery supply is a big deal, and I had no choice but to go back and find it. And fortunately, I was able to find it. Fortunately, it hadn't, bounced off the trail as I was hiking and been hidden behind a bush or anything like that. It was a good chunk of batteries all taped together, but still, it was something that could very easily have been lost. And even though I had to invest a marathon retrieving it, an extra marathon on that day that I hadn't planned on, I was very happy to find those batteries again. So, regardless of what you choose to share for your bonus points moment, it's probably not as embarrassing as that. So thank you to everybody who participates in the UltraPedestrian Wilderness Challenge, all you UPWC players. I really love and appreciate everything that you guys do. It's so cool watching the variety of performances out there. Everybody who's from the beginners who have only been out in the woods in a supported race paradigm before, to the experienced adventurers who are putting up some crazy fast times on some of these incredibly difficult routes. I love seeing what everybody's doing out there, so keep it up. Do your own thing. You can be a family taking 5, 6, 7 days to hike these routes. You can be an ultra runner going out with virtually nothing and peeling it off in a few hours. That's up to you. I love seeing it all. I love seeing all the different approaches and reading and hearing about the different experiences that you have out there. So keep up the good work. Our public lands will be open at some point, hopefully during 2020, so that we can get out there. If not, the Wilderness Challenge isn't just a one-time thing. It carries over from year to year to year. So the planning that you do this year is going to pay off even if you don't get to put it into action until next year. Keep your chins up, keep positive, stay safe, take care of the people you love, and we will be able to get back out into these wild and beautiful places and challenge ourselves and compare our experiences at some point, hopefully much sooner than later, but also hopefully when it's safe for everybody to do so. So next episode, in episode 4, we are going to be announcing our first ever UPWC challenge outside the state of Washington. So we're going to be announcing our first ever Oregon challenge, but it's open to everybody. You don't have to live in Oregon, obviously, to do it. Anybody can do it. So I'm looking forward to announcing that, and that is going to be in cooperation with the Oregon Natural Desert Association. And it will be a fundraiser to help aid their efforts protecting some of the most fragile and amazing parts of Oregon, which we're going to be getting you guys experiencing. And we will also have Kathy giving out her special awards of her handmade trail totems to recognize unique achievement that she feels is worthy of a very special prize. So join us again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. on Facebook. The video will premiere 8 p.m. on YouTube. See you then.